What's up, plant family? Devin is here, and today we're going to be talking about growing rosemary as an indoor-outdoor plant. A lot of us love the idea of growing herbs inside the home, but it can be quite challenging as many herbs really need fresh air, at least for part of the year. Over the last year, I've been growing rosemary as an indoor plant in the wintertime, and then I place it outside in the summertime. And in this video, I'm going to document everything that I've learned, how to grow rosemary so that it looks beautiful, providing us with the wonderful aromatic foliage that we love for our roasted potatoes, roasted chicken, or what have you. Now, a little background first is that rosemary, now known as Salvia rosmarinus, used to be Rosmarinus officinalis. It's recently been changed. This is a Mediterranean native. It's an evergreen shrub that can grow actually quite large in its native habitat, and it's typically noted to be hardy down to zones 8. Some cultivars, some varieties can handle down to zone 7, but for the most part, zone 8 is kind of like that cutoff region. Now, I'm here in Chester County, Pennsylvania, zone 6B. So for us gardeners in zone 7 through 3, it is imperative that we grow our rosemaries in containers that we keep inside in the wintertime and then bring outside when the night temperatures are amicable. So, how to grow them successfully indoors. Now, I bought mine as one of those cool rosemary Christmas trees during the holiday season, and the very first thing that you really need to note is that when they're sold at your grocery stores or your nurseries in those tiny little decorative holiday pots, they're typically grown in containers that are just too small. So the first thing is that you need to upsize them to the next size container. Now, I went from about maybe a 4 or 5 inch pot to like a 6-inch pot here, as you can see. Now, while it is definitely important that you put them in a slightly larger pot, they do love to be root bound because as a Mediterranean native, they are native to dry, rocky soils that get blazing hot in the summertime with very little rainfall. So they're very drought tolerant plants, which actually makes them quite compatible for growing in containers. And with that in mind, it really makes sense that they grow in small containers, typically allowing them to be pot bound with excellent drainage. You always want to make sure that your rosemary has drainage holes in the bottom, like you can see here. And that's going to allow any water to flow through your container and out of the soil so that it doesn't remain waterlogged. They definitely resent being waterlogged. Now, as I was saying, we want to keep them outside as long as those nighttime temperatures are about above 40, you could probably go down to 35 degrees Fahrenheit, but I think a good cutoff is 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 4.5 degrees Celsius. When the nighttime are warmer than that, keep them outside. When they're cooler than that, we bring them back inside. Now, indoors, we really want to ensure that they have a southern facing window or a western facing window for those of us living in the northern hemisphere. If you're living in the southern hemisphere, that would be a northern facing window, and I guess it would also be a western facing window. If you live in the southern hemisphere, please leave a comment below and correct me if I'm wrong. But we need to give them as much sunlight as possible because that's really what they're used to. It can even be helpful to add a grow light. It's definitely essential. If you don't have a southern or western facing window, give it a grow light. If you do have a southern or western facing window, giving it a grow light is also a good option. And that's going to allow them to be nice and happy. Now, while they're inside, I will water them probably about once a week, and I definitely make sure that I feel the soil to ensure that they are definitely dry before I water them the following time, maybe 7 to 10 days later. Now, during the summertime, when the weather is warmer and we're having our plants outside, because they're in containers, I like to opt for less sun than they necessarily can handle. Yes, they can handle be grown in the full direct hot sun, that's what they love. But in a container, that means it's really gonna dry out super fast, probably more quickly than we're able to keep a hold of. So I actually will opt for an eastern facing location that gets maybe 2 hours of direct sunlight in the very beginning of the morning time. Even so, I'm gonna be watering my plant pretty regularly, probably once every 3 days or so. And that's gonna keep your plant nice and happy. They can really, I definitely keep it where the rain falls and flows, and they love sufficient great moisture in the summertime with good warm weather and some good sunlight. Now in the summertime, I will also use fertilizer about once or twice a month. That's just going to give it a little bit of extra boost. If you are looking for some fertilizer, check out the description for a link to this Roberta's Bounty. This is my family's formula for fertilizer. It's kind of like an all-purpose fertilizer. Now it is really important that you continually clip off foliage and actually use it. You know, one of the reasons why we love rosemary is to use it, because as a shrub, an evergreen shrub, they get quite woody at the base. It's 100% normal. It's like a lavender plant, considered actually a subshrub. And it is really important that we are continually clipping off the tops, and that's going to keep our plant a little bit more compact. Now, one thing that you should note is that if it is getting quite leggy, too tall, and you really need to kind of come down on its overall size, if you do clip into this woody section, those woody areas will not regenerate. So if you clip off an entire section like this, that woody base will not create new growth. However, if you're clipping off the green sections or the younger growth, they will absolutely regrow from the areas that you have cut them off, oftentimes even branching into two. So that's going to keep a nice, dense, full, rounded plant. And now one thing that I do recommend doing maybe even once a year, because they are getting pot bound, it is a good idea to give them a root pruning once a year. You can do this, you know, at the beginning of spring, or I've just brought mine back inside for the winter season, so I'm gonna do it right now. And it's, you know, we're still getting enough sunlight outside. My home is still warm enough that it will absolutely regrow just fine to do this root pruning at this time. So let me show you how to do that. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to pop it right out of the pot. And as you can see, that is very nice and root bound. And you can see that it's starting to wrap around, and that's a good signal that yes, root pruning is a good thing to do right now. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut off the bottom inch or so. And we will add this guy, this little frisbee, to the compost pile. And I'm actually going to remove a little bit of this side growth as well, just around the top. Now, we're going to get that same pot we were already using, because we do like it to be nice and root bound again. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some, this is just normal potting mix, just a normal bagged potting mix blend is just fine. We're going to add some to the bottom. See how that situates. Looks pretty good. Now we're going to add some around the edges. Got a little spider running around. And then we want to give it a nice watering. And if there's any extra moisture that flows through, which in my instance there's not, and that's okay, I would discard that. But with all of that in mind, now you know how to grow rosemary as an indoor plant, at least for a part of the year. And you can have rosemary fresh on hand for you know, your Thanksgiving feast, your Christmas dinner, and even your 4th of July barbecue. If you do have any other further questions or comments, make sure to leave them below. I always do my absolute best to answer each and every one of them. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me here on Plant Vibrations. I'll catch you later. Ciao.